Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive alien ships approach through the darkness of space. 3 years of deep space exploration had led to this moment, and Jake felt his heart beating faster as humanity prepared for first contact with another intelligent species. The alien vessels were huge and black with strange curved lines that seemed to flow like water across their hulls. They moved in perfect formation like predators stalking prey. Chief, Engineer Lisa Park walked up beside him with her tablet, showing the energy readings from the alien ships. The power levels were beyond anything humans had ever built, and the weapon signatures made their own defense systems look like toys. Lisa had worked on military projects before joining the Exploration Corps, and she knew dangerous technology. When she saw it, Tactical Officer Ryan Hughes monitored the communication channels as the first alien transmission came through. The voice was deep and harsh with sounds that hurt human ears. The translation software struggled to make sense of the alien language, but slowly words began forming on the screens around the bridge. Primitive species was the first phrase that came through clearly, followed by surrender immediately and slaves for the collective. Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized this first contact was not going to be the peaceful meeting humanity had hoped for. The aliens calling themselves the Zephyrian Collective had not come to trade knowledge or form alliances. War Commander Dex High appeared on the main screen as a towering figure with dark-scaled skin and 4 arms ending in clawed hands. His eyes glowed red in the dim light of his ship's bridge, and when he spoke his voice carried the authority of someone used to absolute obedience. He told the humans that their species was weak and pathetic, and that resistance would only make their slavery more painful. Jake tried to maintain diplomatic protocol, despite the insults and threats. He explained that humanity came in peace and wanted to establish friendly relations with the Zephyrian Collective. He offered to share human technology and culture in exchange for knowledge about the galaxy and its many species. His words were calm and measured, even as his crew tensed around him. Dex High laughed at Jake's offer, and the sound was like grinding metal. He said humans had nothing of value to offer a superior race like the Zephyrians. Their ships were primitive. Toys and their weapons were barely worthy of being called sparklers. The Collective had conquered 47 worlds and enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. Earth would simply be number 40-8. Lisa whispered to Jake that the alien ships were charging their weapon systems. Ryan reported that more Zephyrian vessels were jumping into the system every few minutes. The Defiance was completely outnumbered and outgunned, but Jake refused to show fear or weakness. He continued trying to negotiate while secretly signaling his crew to prepare for the worst. The breakthrough in translation software revealed more disturbing details about Zephyrian culture. They view conquest as a natural right and slavery as the proper fate of inferior species. They had been expanding across the galaxy for over 500 years and had never encountered serious resistance. Every species they met eventually bowed to their superior technology and ruthless tactics. Jake realized that humanity was facing its first real test as a spacefaring civilization. The Zephyrians expected immediate surrender and would accept nothing less than complete submission. Any attempt at negotiation was seen as weakness, and any show of strength was viewed as amusing defiance from primitives who did not understand their place. The situation deteriorated rapidly when Dex High decided to demonstrate Zephyrian power. He ordered his fleet to target the human colony ship New Horizons, which was carrying 50,000 civilians to establish a new settlement. On Kepler 442b, the ship was unarmed and defenseless, with families and children aboard who had never imagined they would become casualties in humanity's first interstellar war. Jake begged the Zephyrian commander to reconsider and offered to surrender the Defiance in exchange for the colony ship's safety. He explained that the civilians were innocent and posed no threat to the Collective. His pleas fell on deaf ears as Dex High viewed mercy as another sign of human weakness. The Zephyrian weapons tore through the New Horizons like paper. The colony Ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from millions of kilometers away. 50,000 human lives ended in seconds as a demonstration of power meant to terrify Earth into immediate submission. The aliens broadcast the destruction across all human communication. Channels to ensure maximum psychological impact. Jake watched in horror as the debris field spread across space, carrying the shattered dreams of families who had volunteered to help humanity expand among the stars. Lisa wept quietly at her station, while Ryan's hand shook as he monitored the increasingly hostile alien communications. The Zephyrians expected humanity's surrender within hours after witnessing such overwhelming force. Instead, something else began to awaken across human space as news of the massacre spread from ship to ship and planet to planet. The Zephyrians had made a calculation error that would prove fatal to their empire. They assumed that, like every other species they had encountered, humans would choose survival over pride and submission over resistance. They were about to learn that they had gravely underestimated the species they had just declared war upon. President Karen Walsh received the emergency transmission from the Defiance while she was having breakfast in the White House residence. The images of the New Horizons' destruction played on her secure tablet as she watched 50,000 human lives end in a flash of alien weapons fire. Her coffee grew cold as she absorbed the magnitude of what had just happened to humanity. Within 30 minutes, every member of the United Earth Council was connected via emergency quantum communication links. The faces on Corinne's screen showed the same mixture of grief and rage that she felt building in her own chest. Representatives from every nation and colony understood that this was humanity's darkest hour and potentially its last. Admiral Ben Carter appeared on the main screen from his command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. His weathered face showed no emotion as he briefed the council on the alien threat assessment. The Zephyrian fleet numbered in the thousands with technology decades ahead of anything in the human arsenal. Their ships were faster, stronger, and better armed than humanity's best military vessels. Dr. Amy Rodriguez joined the briefing from her laboratory on Luna Station, where she had been working on classified defense projects for the past 20 years. Her hands trembled slightly as she accessed files that were marked with security clearances higher than most council members had ever seen. The time for secrets had ended, and humanity's survival depended on revealing capabilities that had been hidden for generations. The room fell silent as Amy began explaining Project Prometheus. For over a century, humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario, not conquest, but the defense of Earth and its colonies against superior alien forces. Every space station, mining platform, and research vessel built in the last 50 years contained hidden military capabilities that could be activated in times of extreme crisis. General Steve Martinez pulled up holographic displays showing the true extent of human military preparation. Cargo ships contained concealed weapon systems. Mining vessels carried enough firepower to destroy small fleets. Research stations were actually heavily fortified military bases disguised as civilian facilities. The aliens thought they were facing a primitive species with limited defensive capabilities. Corinne felt a mixture of pride and sadness as she learned about the massive deception that had protected humanity for decades. While other species pursued aggressive expansion, humans had chosen a different path. They built defenses that looked like civilian infrastructure and weapons that appeared to be scientific instruments. Every human in space was potentially a soldier waiting for activation orders. Admiral Carter explained the doctrine that would guide humanity's response to the Zephyrian threat. Earth would not seek conquest or domination, but would respond to any threat to human life with overwhelming defensive force. The aliens had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed when they murdered innocent civilians as a demonstration of power. The activation of Project Prometheus began immediately as coded signals went out to every human facility in space. Mining ships started revealing hidden missile launchers and particle beam weapons. Research stations deployed defensive shields. and long-range sensors that had been disguised as scientific equipment. Cargo vessels began forming into battle groups with firepower that would surprise any alien fleet dock captain. Jake Morrison and his crew aboard the Defiance received new orders that transformed their exploration mission into something far more dangerous. They would become humanity's eyes and ears behind enemy lines, using their ships' advanced stealth systems to gather intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities and weaknesses. The peaceful exploration vessel was about to become a tool of war. Dr. Rodriguez revealed that human technology had been deliberately designed to appear primitive and inefficient to potential alien observers. The real capabilities were hidden beneath layers of seemingly outdated systems and inefficient designs. Human computers ran at a fraction of their actual speed, while weapons systems operated well below their maximum output levels. The psychological profile of humanity that had been carefully cultivated over decades was also part of the deception. Humans appeared to be individualistic and divided with multiple governments and competing interests. The aliens would not expect the level of coordination and unity that was about to be displayed in defense of Earth and its colonies. General Martinez activated sleeper agents who had been living normal civilian lives throughout human space. Teachers became intelligence analysts, while shopkeepers revealed advanced military training. The network of hidden defenders was so extensive that virtually every human settlement contained people ready to resist alien occupation or support military operations. Karen addressed the United Earth Council with words that would be remembered throughout human history. She declared that humanity would not surrender to alien threats and would fight for the right of every human being to live free from enslavement. The species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and countless natural disasters would not bow to alien conquerors. The first phase of humanity's response involved pulling back the outer colonies to more defensible positions while simultaneously launching deep strike missions against Zephyrian supply lines. The aliens expected panic and disorganization, but instead encountered coordinated resistance that seemed to anticipate their every move. Intelligence reports began flowing in from human agents who had been monitoring galactic communications for years. The Zephyrians had conquered other species by exploiting their technological weaknesses and psychological vulnerabilities. They used overwhelming force followed by generous terms for surrender to convince their enemies that resistance was futile. Admiral Carter smiled grimly as he reviewed the enemy battle plans that human intelligence had intercepted. The Zephyrians were preparing for a quick, decisive victory, followed by the integration of human resources into their empire. They had detailed plans for using human ships and weapons to conquer other species. While human survivors worked as slaves in Zephyrian facilities, the activation codes went out across human space as ordinary-looking civilian vessels began revealing their true nature. A galaxy that thought it understood human capabilities was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. The sleeping giant had been awakened and was preparing to show the Zephyrian collective what happened when someone threatened humanity's children. The Zephyrian invasion fleet approached Titan Station, expecting another easy victory, like the dozens they had achieved across the galaxy. War Commander Dex High had allocated only 3 days for the capture of humanity's largest research facility, believing that overwhelming force would quickly break human resistance. He was about to learn his first lesson about the species he had chosen to enslave. Commander Helen Brooks watched the alien ships approach through the reinforced windows of Titan Station's command center. Her facility had been disguised as a research station for terraforming technology, but was actually one of humanity's most heavily fortified military bases. The aliens had no idea they were about to attack a fortress that had been designed specifically to withstand their type of assault. The first Zephyrian attack waves met defensive fire that surprised them with its intensity and accuracy. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from what appeared to be communication arrays and solar collectors. The station's shields held against bombardment that should have destroyed any human facility. Helen's defenders fought with tactics that confused the aliens who expected Panic and desperate last stands. Colonel Mike Turner led the ground defense forces when Zephyrian shock troops finally breached the station's outer hull. The aliens expected to face terrified researchers and civilian technicians. Instead, they encountered human soldiers who had been training for this exact scenario for years. Every corridor was a trap, and every room was a potential ambush site that cost the invaders dearly. The humans fought in ways that seemed impossible to the Zephyrians, who had never encountered such determined resistance. Helen's people used the station's own systems as weapons, turning life support into poison gas and artificial gravity into crushing force. They fought in zero atmosphere when needed, and continued resistance even when cut off from supplies and reinforcements. Captain Diana Cole and her crew had been conducting deep space reconnaissance missions for over a decade while disguised as a merchant vessel. Their ship, the Wanderer, contained sensors and communication equipment that had been mapping every Zephyrian installation within 100 light years. The aliens thought they were facing a species that knew nothing about galactic politics. Diana's intelligence network began feeding targeting data to human strike forces as the hidden fleet revealed itself across multiple star systems. Mining ships that had been working asteroids for years suddenly launched missile attacks on Zephyrian supply convoys. Research vessels began electronic warfare operations that jammed alien communications and corrupted their navigation systems. Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their tactics better than they did. Human forces appeared in systems that aliens thought were secure and attacked installations that should have been secret. Every Zephyrian advantage in technology was being countered by superior human intelligence and tactical planning. War Commander Zexhai received reports that made no sense according to his understanding of human capabilities. His forces were taking heavy casualties in what should have been simple mop-up operations. Human resistance was increasing rather than decreasing, and their weapons were proving far more effective than initial assessments had suggested. Helen Brooks turned the siege of Titan Station into a grinding battle that lasted for months rather than days. Her defenders used hit-and-run tactics to wear down the Zephyrian assault forces while simultaneously calling for reinforcements from hidden human fleets. The station became a symbol of human defiance that inspired resistance across all the colonies. The breakthrough came when human forces began liberating worlds that the Zephyrians had conquered from other species. Colonel Turner led Marine units in ground assaults that freed alien prisoners who had been enslaved for decades. These liberated species provided intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses and tactical preferences that proved invaluable. Captain Cole's reconnaissance teams discovered that the Zephyrians had been using psychological profiles of various species to predict their behavior in combat. The profiles for humans were completely wrong because they had been based on carefully planted misinformation that made humanity appear weak and divided. The aliens expected selfish behavior and competition between human factions. Instead, they encountered coordinated resistance that crossed all national and cultural boundaries. African colonists fought alongside European settlers, while Asian military units coordinated with American Space Marines. The diversity that the aliens thought would be a weakness became a strength as different human cultures contributed unique tactical approaches. Dr. Amy Rodriguez led teams that began reverse engineering captured Zephyrian technology with speed that astonished alien prisoners. Human scientists improved on designs that had taken the Zephyrians decades to develop. New weapons and defensive systems were being deployed faster than the aliens could adapt their tactics. Psychological impact on Zephyrian forces was severe as they realized they were not fighting the primitive species described in their intelligence reports. Human tactics were sophisticated, and their technology was advancing rapidly. Stories began spreading through the alien fleet about humans who fought with supernatural determination and seemed to appear from nowhere. Helen's defensive Titan station became legendary when her forces not only held the facility but began launching counterattacks against the Zephyrian siege fleet. Mining equipment was converted into kinetic weapons that hurled asteroids at alien ships. Civilian transports became Trojan horses that deliver human special forces directly onto enemy vessels. The tide of battle shifted as human reinforcements arrived from across the solar system. Ships that had appeared to be cargo haulers and passenger liners revealed themselves as heavily armed warships. The Zephyrian siege force found itself surrounded and outnumbered by an enemy that had seemingly materialized from empty space. War Commander Dexhai began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The species he had dismissed as primitive, toys, was proving to be the most dangerous enemy the Zephyrian Collective had ever faced. Human resistance was not breaking under pressure, but growing stronger with each passing day. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this war for over a century, and the Zephyrians had just awakened, something that would change the balance of power among the stars forever. Admiral Ben Carter stood before the holographic display showing 12 Zephyrian military installations spread across 6 star systems. Operation Beehive would be humanity's first major offensive action and would demonstrate to the galaxy that humans did not simply defend, but could strike deep into enemy territory. The synchronized attacks would happen simultaneously across hundreds of light years. Lieutenant Commander Paul Bennett had spent months analyzing Zephyrian communication patterns and military protocols from his intelligence center on Luna Station. His team had identified the exact timing windows when the alien installations would be most vulnerable to coordinated assault. The Zephyrians had grown overconfident, and their security had become predictable. Captain Nicole Davis received her mission briefing aboard the strike cruiser Liberty, which had been disguised as a colonial transport for the past 5 years. Her target was the Zephyrian supply depot at Rigel 7, which contained enough weapons and ammunition to outfit an entire invasion fleet. The facility was heavily defended, but the aliens did not expect an attack from a species they considered primitive. The human strike forces moved into position using routes that Captain Diana Cole's reconnaissance teams had mapped over years of secret observation. Every Zephyrian patrol pattern and sensor grid had been cataloged by human intelligence operatives, who appeared to be ordinary merchants and researchers. The aliens had no idea how thoroughly they were being watched. Major Chris White led the most dangerous mission of Operation Beehive as his Special Forces unit prepared to infiltrate the Zephyrian home system itself. Their target was the Central Command Complex that coordinated military operations across the entire collective. The psychological impact of striking at the heart of Zephyrian power would be worth the enormous risk. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had provided each strike team with weapons and equipment that incorporated reverse-engineered alien technology. Human engineers had improved on Zephyrian designs in ways that would surprise enemy defenders. The aliens expected to face their own obsolete technology in human hands, but would encounter weapons that surpassed their current capabilities. The attacks began precisely as planned, with human forces emerging from hyperspace at calculated points that avoided Zephyrian early warning systems. Nicole's Liberty dropped its cargo hauler disguise and revealed missile launchers that immediately began targeting the Rigel 7 depot's defensive platforms. The facility's shields collapsed under bombardment from weapons the aliens did not know humans possess. Paul Bennett's intelligence team had discovered that the Zephyrians used human psychological profiles provided by various alien species who claimed to understand humanity. The profiles were completely wrong because they had been carefully fabricated by human agents working undercover throughout the galaxy. The aliens expected humans to behave like every other species they had conquered. The Zephyrian defenders at each target location found themselves facing tactical approaches they had never encountered before. Human forces used combined arms coordination that exploited weaknesses in alien defensive doctrine. Strike teams appeared from multiple directions simultaneously, while electronic warfare units jammed communications and corrupted targeting systems. Nicole Davis led her Marines through the corridors of the Rigel 7 depot as Zephyrian defenders tried to mount organized resistance. The aliens had never fought an enemy that adapted so quickly to changing battlefield conditions. Human tactics evolved in real time as commanders shared information and modified their approaches based on enemy responses. Major White's infiltration of the Zephyrian home system succeeded beyond all expectations when his team discovered that the central command complex was virtually undefended. The aliens had never considered that any enemy could penetrate so deeply into their territory. Their home system defenses were designed to repel large fleets, not small teams of highly trained specialists. The simultaneous nature of Operation Beehive created confusion throughout the Zephyrian command structure as reports of human attacks came in from multiple sectors at once. The aliens had never faced an enemy capable of coordinating operations across such vast distances. Their military doctrine assumed that primitive species could only mount local defensive actions. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the battle from her laboratory as human forces tested new weapons and equipment under combat conditions. The reverse-engineered technology was performing better than projected, and human modifications were proving superior to the original Zephyrian designs. Each successful engagement provided data for improving the next generation of human weapon systems. The psychological impact on Zephyrian forces was immediate and severe, as word spread that humans had successfully attacked heavily defended installations across multiple star systems. The species that was supposed to be cowering in fear of alien superiority was instead launching offensive operations that penetrated deep into collective territory. Paul Bennett's intelligence analysis revealed that other alien empires throughout the galaxy were beginning to take notice of humanity's military capabilities. The Ethereal Dominion and the Krillian Empire were quietly repositioning their fleets away from human space. Species that had considered allying with the Zephyrians were reconsidering their diplomatic positions. Nicole Davis completed her mission at Rigel 7 by not only destroying the supply depot, but capturing intact examples of advanced Zephyrian technology. Human science teams would reverse engineer these systems and develop countermeasures within weeks rather than the years such development should have required. The aliens were facing an enemy that learned faster than they could adapt. Major White's team accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history by penetrating the Zephyrian home system and broadcasting a message directly from the heart of collective territory. The transmission reached every corner of the galaxy, showing that nowhere was safe from human reach when they chose to strike. The psychological effect was devastating to alien morale. The success of Operation Beehive demonstrated that humanity had moved beyond purely defensive operations and was capable of taking the war directly to enemy territory. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting on multiple fronts against an enemy that appeared to understand their capabilities better than they understood human potential. Admiral Carter received battle reports that exceeded his most optimistic projections, as human forces achieved their objectives with minimal casualties. The careful preparation and intelligence gathering of the past decades was paying off as humanity revealed capabilities that surprised even their own military leaders. The galaxy was beginning to understand that they had underestimated this species. War Commander Dex High faced the collapse of his invasion timetable as human. Counterattacks disrupted supply lines and communication networks throughout Zephyrian space. The quick victory he had promised his superiors was turning into a prolonged conflict against an enemy that grew stronger with each engagement. Ambassador Susan Lewis sat in her office on Luna Station, watching communication requests flood in from alien species across the galaxy. The success of Operation Beehive had sent shockwaves through galactic politics as civilizations that had never heard of humanity suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was now being courted as a potential ally. The Ethereal Dominion was the first major power to reach out through encrypted channels that bypassed Zephyrian communication networks. Their message was carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. They wanted to discuss mutual defense, agreements against aggressive expansion by the collective. The ethereal beings had witnessed human military capabilities and were impressed by the coordination and effectiveness of the attacks. Captain Tony Martinez led the Liberation Fleet toward the Altair system, where 3 different alien species had been enslaved by Zephyrian forces for over a century. His ships approached the heavily fortified system, using stealth technology that human engineers had developed by studying captured alien sensors. The defenders expected another routine patrol, not a full-scale liberation force. Intelligence officer Rachel Kim intercepted communications between various alien empires showing growing concern about humanity's rapid military development. The Krillian Empire had quietly recalled their deep space exploration fleets from sectors near human territory. The Void Syndicate was conducting urgent reassessments of their expansion plans. Fear was spreading faster than news of human victories. The liberation of Altair became a turning point in galactic opinion as human forces freed over 2 million alien prisoners from labor camps and industrial facilities. Tony's Marines worked alongside freed prisoners to disable Zephyrian installations, while medical teams provided care to aliens who had been enslaved for generations. The grateful survivors would become humanity's most effective ambassadors. Susan Lewis began receiving visits from alien refugees who had escaped from Zephyrian territory with stories of human bravery that spread through underground networks across the galaxy. The narrative was changing from humans being weak primitives to humans being terrifying warriors who fought not just for themselves, but for the freedom of all enslaved peoples. The Nexus Coalition sent a secret delegation to Earth proposing a formal alliance against Zephyrian expansion. Their representative explained that 17 different species were ready to provide intelligence and logistical support for human military operations. The coalition had been planning resistance for decades, but lacked the military capability to challenge collective forces directly. Captain Martinez discovered that the alien prisoners at Altair had detailed knowledge of Zephyrian military weaknesses and tactical preferences. The information they provided revealed that the collective had grown overconfident through centuries of easy victories. Their forces were not prepared to fight an enemy that could match their technology, while exceeding their tactical flexibility. Rachel Kim's analysis of intercepted communications revealed that several neutral species were beginning to view humanity as the potential successor to Zephyrian dominance in their region of the galaxy. The rapid evolution of human military capability, combined with their apparent commitment to liberating enslaved worlds, was creating a new power dynamic. The Zephyrian response to human success was predictably brutal, as they began executing alien prisoners and destroying civilian facilities rather than risk them falling into human hands. These atrocities only strengthened galactic support for humanity while demonstrating the true nature of collective rule to species that had been considering surrender. Susan Lewis found herself coordinating with alien intelligence networks that had been operating in secret for centuries. The underground resistance movement that spanned dozens of worlds was suddenly energized by human success and began providing targeting information for liberation operations. Humanity had become the symbol of hope that oppressed peoples had been waiting for. The Altair liberation became a model for future operations as human forces demonstrated their ability to work effectively with alien allies. Tony Martinez established joint command structures that incorporated freed prisoners into military units, while respecting their cultural differences and tactical preferences. The diversity of approaches strengthened overall effectiveness. Dr. Amy Rodriguez received technology samples from grateful alien species who wanted to contribute to humanity's war effort against the Zephyrians. The exchange of scientific knowledge accelerated human development while providing other species with improved defensive capabilities. A true alliance was forming based on mutual benefit rather than domination. Intelligence reports indicate that the Zephyrian collective was facing internal political pressure as member species began questioning the wisdom of provoking humanity. Some Zephyrian client states were secretly negotiating with human representatives, while others were considering outright rebellion against collective authority. The success at Altair was followed by liberation operations at 6 other systems as human forces worked with local resistance movements to free enslaved populations. Each victory brought new allies and additional intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities while demonstrating human commitment to galactic freedom. Susan Lewis addressed the growing diplomatic crisis as more alien species sought protection from potential human retaliation for past cooperation with the Zephyrians. Her message was clear. Humanity would judge species by their current actions, not their past mistakes. Those who chose peace and cooperation would find humanity to be generous allies. Captain Martinez reported that liberated alien populations were volunteering to serve alongside human forces in future operations. Their knowledge of Zephyrian tactics and technology combined with human military training was creating hybrid units that were proving devastatingly effective against collective forces. Rachel Kim discovered that the Zephyrian war effort was being hampered by supply shortages and communication disruptions caused by human special operations. The careful coordination of military and intelligence activities was achieving strategic effects far beyond the tactical success of individual missions. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity represented something unprecedented, a species with advanced military capabilities that used their power to liberate rather than conquer. This realization was causing fundamental shifts in alliances and power structures that had remained stable for centuries. The word spreading through the galaxy was simple but profound. Humanity could not be intimidated, bullied, or conquered by traditional means. Any species that threatened human civilians would face retaliation that was swift, coordinated, and devastating. But those who chose cooperation would find humanity to be the most reliable and generous ally they had ever known. War Commander Dex High stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the complete collapse of his invasion plans as human forces systematically dismantled Zephyrian military power across multiple sectors. His superiors were demanding immediate results while his field commanders reported impossible tactical situations. The species he had dismissed as primitive toys was destroying an empire that had dominated the galaxy for 5 centuries. The Zephyrian High Command faced a crisis that threatened the very existence of their civilization as member species began open rebellion, and allied powers distanced themselves from the collective. The humans had accomplished something unprecedented by turning a defensive war into a liberation campaign that inspired resistance throughout Zephyrian territory. President Karen Walsh received intelligence reports showing that the galactic balance of power was shifting dramatically as neutral species aligned themselves with humanity while former Zephyrian allies sought separate peace agreements. The war that had begun with an alien ultimatum for human surrender was ending with the fundamental restructuring of interstellar politics. Dex High made the desperate decision to launch one final assault directly on Earth itself, believing that destroying the human homeworld would break the species' will to fight. He gathered the remaining Zephyrian fleet into a massive armada that would either achieve total victory or face complete annihilation. The gamble would determine the fate of both civilizations. Admiral Ben Carter activated the Soul Defense Grid as Zephyrian forces began their approach to the solar system. The network of hidden weapons platforms and automated defense systems that had protected Earth for decades revealed themselves as the alien fleet encountered resistance beyond their worst projections. The homeworld of humanity was the most heavily defended system in known space. Captain Alan Foster commanded the defense coordination from Luna Station as human forces that had been fighting across the galaxy returned to protect their birthworld. The fleet that assembled to meet the Zephyrian assault represented the full military might of he combined with allied forces from liberated worlds. Earth would not face this threat alone. The Battle of Sol became the defining moment of the war as Zephyrian forces encountered defensive capabilities that exceeded their understanding of human technology. The Soul Defense Grid had been designed by Dr. Amy Rodriguez and her team to stop exactly this type of massive assault using weapon systems that had been secretly developed over decades of preparation. Dex High watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed by defensive fire that seemed to anticipate every tactical move. Human forces fought with coordination that suggested a level of battlefield awareness beyond anything the Zephyrians had encountered. The primitive species was demonstrating military capabilities that surpassed collective technology. The psychological impact of the failed assault on Earth resonated throughout the galaxy as species that had feared Zephyrian power for centuries witnessed the complete defeat of their most powerful fleet. The message was clear. Humanity could defend itself against any threat, while simultaneously protecting those who sought their aid. Admiral Carter made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic politics for generations to come. Rather than destroying the defeated Zephyrian forces, he ordered their capture and offered medical treatment to wounded aliens. The species that had committed genocide against human civilians would receive mercy from the very people they had tried to enslave. President Walsh's broadcast to the galaxy established what would become known as the human doctrine. Humanity would not seek conquest or domination, but would respond to any threat against human life with unlimited force. However, they would also show mercy to defeated enemies and extend protection to any species that chose peace over aggression. The trials of captured Zephyrian war criminals became a model for interstellar justice as human courts demonstrated fairness and due process that impressed even former enemies. Vex-High himself received a defense attorney and a fair trial despite his role in ordering the massacre of innocent civilians. The galaxy witnessed justice rather than revenge. Dr. Rodriguez led the establishment of the Galactic Research Consortium as humanity began sharing advanced technology with peaceful species while maintaining military superiority over potential aggressors. The scientific cooperation that emerged from the war accelerated development across multiple civilizations, while ensuring that no single species could threaten galactic peace. The Interspecies Cooperation Treaty was signed within a year of the Battle of Sol with Earth, serving as the guaranteeing power for agreements between dozens of former enemies. Susan Lewis became the first human Secretary General of the Galactic Council as species that had been enemies for centuries agreed to work together under human protection. Captain Jake Morrison received promotion to Admiral and found himself addressing a gathering of alien ambassadors representing over 100 different species. His message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity had learned from their own bloody history that the greatest strength was not the ability to destroy enemies, but the wisdom to transform them into friends. The transformation of galactic civilization was rapid and comprehensive as trade networks replaced conquest fleets and research stations replaced military outposts. Species that had spent centuries in conflict began cooperating on projects that benefited everyone, while human forces provided security guarantees that made such cooperation possible. The final scene of the war showed children from dozens of alien species playing together in parks on Earth while their parents worked side by side with humans in space stations throughout the galaxy. The diversity that had once been a source of conflict became a strength that accelerated progress and understanding. Admiral Morrison reflected on the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. The most dangerous species to threaten was also the most valuable species to befriend. Humans fought not just for themselves, but for everyone who could not fight back. They showed mercy to defeated enemies and protection to vulnerable allies. The rule that now governed galactic politics was elegant in its simplicity. Do not provoke Earth, because humans would respond to any threat with overwhelming force, but would also offer friendship to anyone who chose peace. The species that had been dismissed as primitive toys had become the guardians of galactic civilization. The galaxy had learned that humanity possessed something more dangerous than advanced weapons or superior tactics. They had moral authority, combined with the military capability to enforce it. This combination made them the natural leaders of a new galactic order, based on cooperation rather than conquest and justice rather than domination.